It is the stuff of Hollywood legend. The night of November 11th, 1919 was supposed to be the most romantic in movie history. Two stars of the screen were deeply entangled in a passionate dance at the Hollywood Hotel, the setting for the marriage party of Rudolph Valentino and Jean Acker, a little event that was proclaimed no less than the marriage of the century. Everything was going swimmingly, that is until the public show wrapped up and the newlyweds had to face the reality of their new lives. Valentino knocked on the locked door of his suite, hoping to consummate his new marriage, but he was refused entry. Acker, having felt too late that marrying him was a mistake, then fled to another lover's arms, and shockingly, it was another woman. That woman was Grace Darmond. Grace Darmond was no ordinary woman. In an instant, Grace became Hollywood tabloid gold, the bisexual blonde star who rescued her lover from the sheik's sheets. But behind that gossip lies a rich, turbulent life of ambition, romance, controversy, and ultimately tragic obscurity. This is the story of Grace Darmond. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Grace Darmond was born Grace Marie Gliona in Toronto, Ontario, the daughter of Vincent and Alice Gliona. Her father was an Italian-born violinist, and her mother Canadian. When Grace was a teenager, her father died and she and Alice moved to the United States, settling in Chicago. It was in this Midwestern city that Grace's talent first bloomed. As a shy schoolgirl, she discovered the stage and caught the acting bug, so powerfully that even in an elementary school play, she was spotted by a member of the Selig Film Company, who offered her an immediate screen test. By 1914, barely 16 years old, she had left her birth name behind and became Grace Darmond, debuting in Selig Polyscope's comedy short, When the Clock Went Wrong. Her looks and presence quickly caught the eye. Selig cast her as a leading lady in 4 1915 releases, A Texas Steer, The Millionaire Baby, A House of 1,000 Candles, and A Black Sheep, opposite stars like Tyrone Power Sr. Grace liked being in films because the studio was in Chicago where she lived, she told a reporter, a practicality that balanced her stage experience with George M. Cohan's company. She grew into her glamour. She was light, wavy hair with a tinge of gold, and the complexion of peaches and cream, very modest, observed writer Caroline Carr. Carr's food analogy was pretty apt, as Grace was a girl who enjoyed food a great deal. In fact, she even claimed to aspire to the opposite of most stars when it came to body image. "I want to be fat more than anything else in the world," she said. "I eat anything fattening and try not to exercise too violently. I adore fat people. They look so comfortable and happy." In an industry obsessed with slim silhouettes, Grace's candid approach to appetite certainly set her apart. But even as her talent and beauty impressed audiences, her off-camera relationships with the studio soured. In early 1916, William Selig mysteriously and very abruptly terminated her contract for reasons not fully explained. Internal memos showed the studio head Selig even warned other producers to avoid hiring Miss Darmond, making her an early victim of Hollywood blacklisting. Devastated and unrepentant, the 18-year-old sent Selig a telegram pleading, "Won't you forgive me just this once? Stepdaddy isn't working and they need my help very badly. Please let me stay." It's unsure who exactly Stepdaddy was, but the obvious candidate would have been her mother's new partner. She also promised to be a, quote, "good, obedient little girl, if given another chance." While it's lost to history what exactly her infraction had been, the studio's ultimatums to her show that even early on, Grace's feisty independence could clash with Hollywood's rigid conventions. Before I get any further into Grace's unique and very controversial life as a star, I'd like to show you all the range of shirts I now have available in the Hollywood Mystery Store. All the shirts are designed in-house and are completely exclusive to Hollywood Mysteries. You won't see these designs elsewhere, so if you're wearing one, it'll be something a little special. I have designs featuring quite a few silent-era stars such as Louise Brooks, Gloria Swanson, Rudolph Valentino, and Paula Negri. You can find a link to the store down in the description and also on screen now. Every sale is a huge help to the channel, and I love seeing the messages you send with the purchases over on the site. Thank you so much to all of you who have purchased one. Feel free to check it out and grab some unique Hollywood merch. And finally, don't forget to check out the Hollywood Histories podcast series over on Patreon and in the YouTube members area. I did a recent episode on the Selig Polyscope Company, which I mentioned earlier as having signed Grace, and there are plenty more episodes to choose from. For just $3 a month, you get access to all of them, as well as ad-free, uncensored, early access to the main videos and other perks. Thank you so much to all the Patreon supporters and members. It makes all the difference. Now let's get back to Grace Darmond. Whether through contrition or the vagaries of the system, Grace soon found a new home. In 1916, she was hired by Pathé to star in the 15-chapter serial, The Shielding Shadow, a cloak and dagger adventure that kept her busy and visible. But the real breakthrough came after she joined Vitagraph Pictures in 1917. There, Grace became the steady leading lady to matinee idol Earl Williams, headlining 7 features through 1919. Critics really took note this time. Variety raved about the 1917 social drama The Other Man, praising both the gripping plot and Grace's performance. Grace Darmond is the new leading ingenue at the Vitagraph plant, the trade paper gushed. And she is a corking-looking blonde who will make a hit with the fans now that she is with a company making regular releases. In 1919's The Valley of the Giants, a sprawling lumberjack epic also co-starring Wallace Reed, Variety again singled her out, calling her a blonde who plays her love scenes charmingly. And I can't be the only one who would like to see another sprawling Hollywood lumberjack epic on screens again. In any case, it all seemed on course. She was a rising star in Hollywood's golden age, and things were looking up for her after a shaky start. Grace even made film history by appearing in The Gulf Between, the first Technicolor movie ever released in 1918. In the movie, amazed audiences watched her glowing form as a shipwrecked heiress, now the colorful symbol of silent cinema's technological future, which Grace seemed assuredly to be a part of. But fate had other plans to test her luck, both professionally and personally. By mid-1919, Grace's career had brought her to the very heart of Tinseltown society, and into a love triangle that would make headlines. It began when she met Jean Acker, an ambitious young actress and protege of stage legend Alla Nazimova. According to accounts, Grace fell hard for Jean soon after their first meeting. Over the summer of 1919, the two actresses danced at parties, took late-night rides, and steered each other away from suffocating relationships. Grace urged Jean to break free from Nazimova's ownership and move in with her. Acker, torn between the star and her mentor, wavered. It wasn't certain in her mind that the sometimes volatile Grace would be any easier to deal with than Nazimova. But Jean Acker also learned of a handsome new Italian actor named Rudolph Valentino, and by autumn she struck up a friendship with him. Seeking a convenient escape from both Grace and Nazimova, Acker asked Valentino to marry her, a solution that stunned her female circle. Late that night, the couple arrived at the Hollywood Hotel, where Jean Acker lived. They joined a lobby dance and smiled for photographers and guests. But when Acker retired early, Valentino followed and discovered that his bride had bolted her room shut. After knocking fruitlessly, he eventually gave up and left. Hours later, Jean Acker quietly slipped out of the hotel suite and walked straight into Grace Darmond's arms, confessing that marrying Valentino had been a terrible mistake. The next morning, the tabloids were poised. Something was up and they were going to snare it. A stunned Valentino penned a letter to Jean. "Come to your senses," he entreated, offering to prove his sincere love and eternal devotion. But within days, Valentino discovered that Jean was already in the arms of another. At the messy divorce trial 2 years later, he testified that he begged Acker to come back, and she brusquely told him, "No, you go back like a good boy." For his part, Valentino maintained he had respected Jean's privacy but was furious to find her constantly accompanied by Grace, and Grace's mother, Alice Johnson, at Grace's Franklin Avenue bungalow. So he burst into the apartment, pushing Alice aside, demanding to know the whereabouts of his wife. Jean was, Alice told her, taking a bath. Valentino wasn't in the mood to wait, so he opened the bathroom door and began a furious argument with the bathing Jean. The scandal grew so intense that newspapers famously termed it the bathroom incident. Producers, nervously sniffing headlines, wondered if silent screen audiences would care more about this real-life drama than any plot on film. As it turned out, they did, and the subsequent divorce trial was an even greater media and public circus than the wedding had been. Grace and her mother were both called to testify about the bathroom incident. Finally, a divorce was granted. Valentino went from strength to strength after this, at least for a little longer. But Acker would never recover her career, and the accusations of a lesbian affair were to haunt both of the women. Through it all, Darmond and Acker stuck together. They took a small bungalow on Orange Avenue in Hollywood, moving in as so-called companions. Grace then used her pull at Paramount to help Jean land a film role in See My Lawyer, which she herself produced and had a title that was not a little ironic. The two women were often seen hand in hand, Darmond the free-spirited blonde beauty, and Acker dark-haired and diminutive. Within the glittering world of early Hollywood, they were part of Alla Nazimova's discreet network of queer women that was only spoken of in hushed tones among insiders at the time, but who in more recent years have become important figures in the history of lesbian Hollywood. The affair was surprising, and yet it somehow made sense to those who knew Grace. After all, Grace had once told a reporter she valued a partner who could appreciate comfort. Despite Hollywood's prurient curiosity, she never went to excessive lengths to hide the fact that she was smitten with, and very comfortable with, Jean. Yet the very drama of 1919, a wedding partly derailed by a clandestine homosexual rendezvous, also cast a shadow on Grace's screen career. Studios grew skittish about starlets who courted that kind of notoriety. Within a year, Darmond's name that had once blazed atop Vitagraph posters began to fade. She continued to work steadily, below the surface, one might say, but more often in smaller parts and short serials. The 1920s were a mixed era of achievements and missteps for Grace Darmond. She co-starred in a string of movies, some notable, some forgotten, most now lost either way, as Hollywood's silent boom continued. In the 1920 adventure serial Below the Surface, she played a manipulative vamp and impressed observers with her allure. Variety's review of the submarine drama singled Grace out. With her pretty face and figure, it is no wonder the driver's son fell for her hard, the critic noted. The film also paired her with director Irvin Willett, who would become a lifelong friend. But not every picture was a success, far from it in fact. Grace starred in the W.S. Van Dyke serial The Hawk's Trail in 1921, and in the Warner Brothers 7-chapter A Dangerous Adventure, both of which were disastrous. The latter in particular was meant to be a wild jungle romp. Grace and actress Darylus Perdue as treasure-hunting sisters, accompanied by a circus menagerie in colonial Africa. Instead, it descended into legend as a filmmaking nightmare. On set, a terrified Grace dodged charging monkeys and elephants that were left on the loose. Producer Jack Warner later joked that he and his brother had to double as stunt guards against Grace's irate co-star Pearl the Elephant. But the situation was no joke. The Warner brothers were running a set that was outrageously neglectful of basic safety standards, and was a disgrace even for the era. Eventually, Pearl took her frustration out on Darmond, and Grace was thrown violently from the animal's back, and she was fortunate to only suffer torn hip ligaments and a catalog of bruises in what could have easily been a fatal accident. 2 years later, the studio excised almost all of the original 30-reel serial into a truncated feature, which did only modest business. In other words, the whole debacle had been for near nothing. In between the action, Grace tried to keep her career afloat. In 1921's romantic comedy Handle with Care, she played a woman overwhelmed by suitors, a role that earned her notice for her striking beauty, even if critics found her talent only so-so. She lensed one more 15-part serial, the Hope Diamond mystery featuring a young Boris Karloff in a side character role. But behind the scenes, Grace's life was increasingly tangled in courtrooms rather than studios. More than once, she found herself under oath. Her 1921 testimony to defend Jean during the infamous divorce from Valentino was only the half of it. A year later, Grace became a witness in a bizarre fraud case. She accused a former friend, P.H. Daniels, of tricking her into signing what she thought was a mere reference letter, but which turned out to be a $250 promissory note, a sum he promptly failed to repay. During the hearing, tempers flared and Grace cried, "Liar," at the stand, nearly causing her removal from the courtroom. Perhaps the most sensational trial came in early 1923. Grace found herself inadvertently mixed up in a robbery case involving her former chauffeur, a shady character named E.A. McNabb. The story dragged Grace into court when she revealed that McNabb had given her a fur coat and beaded purse claimed to be stolen as gifts, which she then innocently sold to a neighbor. When police arrested McNabb for the theft, Grace was called to testify. The intensity of the situation even prompted police to guard her and Jean's home in Hollywood, following a tip that someone planned to abduct Grace to keep her silent or even shut her up for good. It was Hollywood scandal at its melodramatic best, a silent screen star drawn into a seedy crime drama worthy of the movies. In a strange twist that same year, Grace would herself play a thief on film in Universal's The Midnight Guest, where she is transformed from burglar to lady, though critics noted that her off-screen troubles seemed to show on camera. Harrison's reports complained her performance was marred greatly by her lack of grace, and Variety snarked that the movie was essentially a one-woman fashion show. Grace Darmond does a fashion parade all by herself, the review sniffed, and that is about the best thing she does in the picture. Through it all, Grace's personal life continued to steal headlines, even after the Acker-Valentino episode had faded. In January 1923, she and Jean Acker had separated. The lovers were by then part-time roommates, but no longer a couple by Grace's account. Grace soon shocked the press again by announcing that she was engaged to marry Maurice Lefty Flynn, a former Yale football star turned actor. Flynn immediately and somewhat curiously denied knowing her at all and furiously demanded she retract the claim. Grace did so, calling the whole episode an unfortunate incident which has shaken my faith in men terribly. If Flynn was a false alarm, Grace's true next chapter would be even stranger. In April 1925, not quite a year after scuttling the Flynn engagement, the 32-year-old Grace married Notre Dame football hero Harvey Leon Madison. In interviews, Grace spoke as if she found her soulmate. "Harvey is the only man I've ever loved," she sighed, praising his broad-mindedness and letting her continue acting. Their marriage barely lasted 4 whirlwind months. By late summer, Madison had returned home from weekend gambling trips in Tijuana without a dime, and Grace was accusing him of inflicting extreme cruelty and outright squandering her fortune. In a deposition, she lamented, "His great weakness was in drawing face cards. He would borrow money from me and others, go to Tijuana, and come home without any." The marriage collapsed and they divorced quietly in 1926. She was not quite done with romance. Early in 1926, Grace married again, this time to a mining magnate and theater owner named Henry J. Matson, whose name was sometimes reported as Hendrik or Harry Matson. This union, too, proved short-lived, ending in divorce that December. Contemporary records show they were wed March 16, 1926, and split by year's end. Finally, in January 1928, she wed Randolph N. Jennings, a wealthy oil heir and Hollywood investor. For a time, Grace adopted the life of a society wife in Beverly Hills, retiring from film work to live in luxury on North Beverly Drive. That gilded chapter also unraveled by the mid-1930s. Jennings and Darmond separated amid mutual recriminations. Grace accused him of gambling and cruelty, while he claimed she had abandoned her career without his encouragement. Their messy legal battles dragged on for years, In 1933, Grace secured a tentative divorce, then strangely reconciled with Jennings a few months later. When they finally parted ways again in 1934, each accused the other of wrongdoing. Grace even tried to annul their marriage on the grounds that she hadn't agreed to it of her own will. Finally, in March 1935, the divorce became final. Grace insisted that Jennings was worth $2 million and that he had effectively ruined her career. Jennings countered that he had in fact tried to revitalize her acting prospects, but that she had no interest in continuing to act. They settled out of court in 1937 with undisclosed terms, and another tumultuous marriage was at last over. By the late 1920s, Grace's film career was all but finished. After 1927's Wages of Conscience, her silent-era swan song, she drifted away from the studios. She reportedly took a walk-on role as a dressmaker in the 1941 comedy, Our Wife, but none of the credits can actually confirm her presence. She simply disappeared from public view. In Hollywood, she remained famously reclusive. No glamour photo shoots, no fan club bulletins. She settled into quieter comfort first in her Beverly Hills home, and later an apartment at the San Ramon Hotel on Sunset Boulevard. Grace Darmond lived for decades away from the spotlight. Friends noted that her only public interviews came in the early 1920s. In retirement, she declined almost all publicity. On October 8, 1963, at age 69, or possibly 65 depending on the source, she died quietly of chronic nephritis and heart disease in Los Angeles. To the very end, she remained unconventional. Her longtime friend, director Irvin Willett, reported that she left instructions to donate her body to science. Indeed, the University of Southern California School of Dentistry took possession of her remains for research. No star-studded memorial or obituary drew lines around her life, only an archival note that her heart disease had prevailed. The trail of Grace's life had gone cold, as Hollywood often did with its silent-era players. By the time the world recorded her passing, the movies she made and the romances she lived were fading memories, and no longer physically in existence for the most part. What remains of Grace Darmond is a mosaic of facts, photographs, brief clips, and faded gossip. She made nearly 50 films that kept her working for over a decade, but those pictures are almost all destroyed. And though she rarely spoke for herself, she left hints of her character in fiery letters. In the end, perhaps the most lasting image of Grace Darmond is that scandalous honeymoon rescue. It's an unfairly small epitaph for a woman who wanted so much more. Success on screen, adventure, love, and the freedom to live life on her own terms. She was a Sea Lake pioneer, a Vitagraph girl, and a woman right in the furnace of Hollywood's birthing ground. Darmond was something of an exile from the studio formula, yet she remained entwined with its greatest myths: Technicolor experimentations, celebrity tabloid wars, and the hypocrisy of the era's morality, whether to do with sexuality or female body image. Married to men yet loving women, adored for her visage but exasperating to power brokers, a public figure in the gossip columns yet intensely private and quiet life, Grace Darmond was, to borrow the old phrase, one for the ages. In all these ways, the self-described little fat girl who wanted to be comfortable and happy left her mark, a reminder that even the most ephemeral movie star can turn real life into legend. I hope this episode filled in a few gaps about Grace Darmond beyond her most famous role as the perceived troublemaker at the Valentino-Acker wedding, which was, of course, a very unfair assessment of her. If you did, let me know what you thought of her, and also please do consider subscribing and giving the video a like if you made it this far. Thanks for listening. Until next week, sweet dreams.